everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are starting a brand new show today, and I'm so excited. It is one that I have been wanting to see ever since I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion on this channel, like a year or so ago. But Revolutionary Girl Utena, I was recommended this show when I was watching Neon Genesis. They were like, you would really like Revolutionary Girl. And I was like, okay. And so I have been slowly anticipating. I had it on a poll previously and it got second place. And I was like, oh, darn it. It was really close, but it got second place. And so I was like, that's fine. I'll put it on another poll eventually, and here we are. So I'm super excited. I know that it's 39 episodes in a movie. That's all I know. It is an anime original, supposedly, or it's based on like a light novel or two, or the manga came out after it, whatever, which is exciting. It's a series I can complete. I feel good about that. I'm like, yes. And I'm really excited because I think it's a shoujo. I want to get more into a few more shoujos, so I'm really excited. And it's a classic. It's a retro series, so that's really good. The thing that had me terrified going into this series was that I had been watching, I think it's Mother's Basement. They're a content creator. They do a lot of video analyses. I get sad because I don't get to watch a lot of their work because I don't want to see spoilers, obviously, since I'm a reaction channel. But they had done a series. The main focus was Full Metal Alchemist, which I had seen, but their whole point of the video was talking about how a lot of older series are not getting picked up or their licenses renewed by streaming services, and so they're kind of becoming this lost media, and then the physical media that you can get is getting more and more expensive, which is a problem. And so while watching the video, I had just done the poll in early June, and this series had won, and as I was watching the video, they were like, yeah, and Revolutionary Girl Utena is now no longer available on streaming. And I went, what? So I went and checked and I was like, son of a bitch. And so they were like, yeah, it's on YouTube, but it's like 480p. And I'm like, oh my God. So someone, Kelsey on Discord, was like, you should just watch it in 480p and experience it the same way that people had to back on YouTube back in the day. And I was like, oh my God, I could have done that. I thought about that. I could have done that. I watched Berserk, the 1997 series, off of YouTube at like 780p or 720p before the Blu-ray came out. But luckily, Anthony, who is a patron on Patreon, has been really, really kind to me in the past. And if there's been a series I've had trouble locating, they have the Blu-ray. They are able to get the files for it. Because for some reason, my Blu-ray player, as I discovered during my review of Unico, it does not let me record the visuals for the reaction from that service. It's got a decoder on it. What can we do? So special thanks to Anthony, who took time out of their day and life to basically ensure that I would have the files to react to this series. I was starting to feel really nervous because I was like, oh crud, the series won, and I don't want to go back to Patreon and be like, hey guys, sorry, but I don't have access to the show. Or I would have just watched it on YouTube. It just wouldn't have been high quality. So I'm really, really thankful for Anthony for taking the time to get these files ready for me. So thank you. One thing I want to note before we start, if you're new to my channel, there is a link to the reaction in the description below. So you won't see it on here because of copyright, but there's a link to it in the reaction. But because I'm a reaction channel, I want to pay homage to the official release and all of that. So I do have a microphone that I use. You won't be able to see it because I've got it clipped off screen and edited, but it's gonna be a little bit transparent on the visuals and you may not be able to hear it all. Go watch it on YouTube if you want to see the whole series first, and then you can come back and watch the reactions. But I get questions a lot being like, can you just not talk and show me the series? And I'm like, go to YouTube and watch it on your own time if that's the case. But I am going to try to do this without spoilers. I do have a moderator who's going to go through the comments and check and make sure there aren't spoilers in the comments. So I love to interact with people in the comments section. I love to talk with you about the episode, about the series, but I also don't want to know what's going to happen. So I will have a moderator check. If you just get a heart from me in the comments but no reply, that means I couldn't read your comment because of spoilers. But if I do see your comment and I am allowed to read it and there's no spoilers, I'm going to be so excited to talk to you about the series. It's going to be a lot of fun. But with that being said, I'm so excited to dive in. I don't know what I'm getting into. I know nothing about this series. I'm going in completely blind, and we'll just see what we get. So episode 1, let's do it, right? So we're going to start Revolutionary Girl Utena episode 1, and we're going to do that here. And the link down below in 3, 2, 1, and let's see what this show is about. What? I'm on board. I'm on board. I'm into it. I'm into the insanity. Welcome. Welcome. This is why I think this series is going to harken back to why I love anime so much. And it's because it's so fantastical in so many ways. And you really have to suspend your disbelief for a large part of it. But that's kind of like, it's so emotion driven, and I feel like it taps into a moment in your life. Like when you're in middle school, you're going through hormones and emotions, and nothing makes sense. You've turned a point from where you're going from childhood to adulthood, and nothing is right, and everything kind of just feels like it doesn't make sense. But that's the way it is, and you're just expected to go along with it and go, sure, yeah, all this makes sense, certainly. And I feel like it makes sense now that they said they're in middle school, although 80s and 90s anime, I feel like it's part of like a childhood fantasy. Like when you're in middle school, you want to imagine yourself as an adult. I did it all the time. I would draw pictures of what I look like as an adult. And I feel like when you're a kid, you try to imagine yourself as an adult and what that adult world is like. So a lot of shows that involve teenage characters, they often look a lot older than they are because that's part of the illusion. It's part of the fantasy. But that straight up student council looks like they're 30. I was like, and then when they said the middle schooler Utena, I was like, now wait a minute. So yeah, I could see why watching Neon Genesis, y'all recommended this show, because there's a bonkers factor. There is a bonkers factor, but there's also like, the score is incredible. The animation is gorgeous. I am absolutely 100% in. I feel like I'm gonna need to watch ahead so I can try to curb spoilers, because I feel like the show is going to explain everything to us. I know that it is. It's going to explain stuff to us. It's the first episode. They're trying to lure you in. They're trying to hook you, and you're just like, wait, what is this? What's going on? And so you're going to be left with a lot of questions that I feel as we move forward, they're going to get answered, right? So that's really exciting, but oh my God. Yes. So let's talk about this episode, and I've turned the sound off so I can go back through it and talk with you all in the discussion. I instantly, the moment that we had the roses on all sides and the border, which I think is a really interesting choice. It feels very manga. It feels very shoujo. Have the border with the roses. I love the roses are part of the theme because roses are beautiful, but they have thorns. So you have that little motif with it. It reminded me of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, which I feel this came before Hanako-kun, so they might have been influenced by it. And I've seen other shoujo with similar aspects as well. But the concept of have you heard and the rumors and all that, that feels like Hanako-kun a lot, which is one of the first shows I watched on this channel. It's a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. But I get those vibes. I get Sailor Moon reincarnation vibes. If you've not watched Sailor Moon, it's one of my favorites. It shaped my childhood. I love Sailor Moon so much. But in that series, there is like a reincarnation element to it. Because at first when Utena's like, oh, well, it's from my childhood, she can't quite remember, so she assumes it's from her childhood when her memory wasn't so good. But then when you go back to this beginning here, she's making out with this guy, and you're like, but girl, you're in middle school now, so I don't think that's the case. So let's go back through this. So once upon a time, there was Princess, who was grieving the deaths of her mother and father, and Utena looks like the princess. So we need to, this is Whiteboard Kun, by the way. Whiteboard Kun is my explainer of all things. He assists me whenever we go. Something that's going to be interesting about this series, and the fact that it was written in the 80s, is going to be looking at gender constructs, because this series seems to be playing a lot with gender and with expectations of gender and all of that. So I'm excited to see where that goes, to see what kind of discussion we have, especially for the 80s, because, you know, there were some trying times growing up and gender expectations. So that's going to be interesting to look at. But so basically we have this orphaned princess who just, we're going to say it's Utena because she looks like her. She has the pink hair, has the tiara from the OP, everything. And so even the graves have roses on them. So there's some kind of rose motif with all of this, right? She was grieving the deaths, and before the princess appeared a traveling prince mounted upon a white horse. I mean, what girl from the 80s didn't love horses or white knights on horses or princes? I mean, it has a very Sleeping Beauty vibe to it. I like it. But so here's the thing. The prince has this red cape and has this like diamond appearance, and he has dark skin, but he has like lavender hair. Okay? So we have this prince, and the prince he has lavender hair because that seems to be relevant. And he almost seems to have like a diamond motif. I want to note that as like, again, giving me major Sailor Moon vibes. But he shows up with his gallant appearance and gentle smile, and he gives the princess the scent of roses. He gives off the scent of roses. And then he makes out with her. So I'm like, girl, you ain't a kid if he's making out with you. Or he kisses her eyes, kisses her tears away. And says, little one who endures such hardship. I like that it was a little girl voice saying this, all on your own. He's like, don't lose strength. Don't lose your strength and nobility even when you grow up. So maybe she was a kid. Oh. As a token, remember this day, take this. And he gives her the ring, which she does look little in all of this. He's like, we'll meet again, will we not? And the ring will guide you to me. So I thought at the beginning, and I'm going to tell you all that my thing is, on this channel for discussions, I like to posit a lot of theories. They are not necessarily going to be correct, but we're going to find out as we go. And if the show proves me wrong, cool. If it doesn't, cool. But from this, could the ring the prince gave her be anything other than an engagement ring? Well, I mean, every little girl would tend to think that. But so he gives her the ring, and the ring has the seal of roses on it. So, which the council, we're going to put them over here. The council also has the same thing. Okay. So we're going to go with that. The council also has the seal of roses on their ring. So I don't know. My initial thoughts before we even started, when we got to the OP, my initial thoughts were that the prince was reborn into a woman. And the woman is Himamiya. And Utena was reborn from the princess into her current self. And she finds Himamiya, doesn't realize that she was once the prince, and they fall in love. And it's showing how love it's not bound by gender. Gender has nothing to do with love. You love who you love, regardless of their sexual orientation or their biological gender. Gender's a construct. That's the thing. I thought that that's where we were going with this, but the ED leads you to believe that the prince is a separate person and that Himamiya and Utena, or it could be the opposite, right? It could be that for Himamiya, Utena was the prince, because that's kind of how it is now. The whole rose and the sword thing makes it a little bit more interesting, but we'll get to that. And so this was all well and good, but she was so impressed by him that she decided that she vowed to become a prince herself. And it says, but is that really okay? Yes. The answer is yes. And that's why I'm very interested to see how this show from the 80s examines this, or from the 90s. I want to look real quick. I'm not going to look up any plot details, so don't worry. But I want to see Utena. When was this series? When was the manga made? And when was the anime made? I'm not going to read anything. I just want to know. So the anime was from 1997, from that time. And the manga was from 1996 to 1998. Okay. Fine. Fair. So this was from the 90s, not the 80s. It does seem to draw some like motifs from the 80s, which is why I kind of thought it was, but that's fine. So yeah. So is that really okay, right? I feel like a lot of shows from the late 80s into the 90s were focusing on like female, like girl power and gender constructs, because there was a lot of shows that were really undermining female characters, and it was like, should we be doing this? And I feel like shows like this might have been a response to that, being like, is it okay for a princess to become a prince? Well, I feel like it's not necessarily that she wants to be a man. It's that she doesn't want to be considered what we stereotypically think of as female damsels in distress, and that's that they are weak and powerless. And she's like, no, this prince gave me motivation to be strong, so here we go. So I like how it's called Duel 1. First duel is the Rose Bride. So we have this concept called the Rose Bride. Okay. And it doesn't seem like it's a legit, like a bride as in, I'm going to marry you and have babies with you. That doesn't seem like it at all. Instead, what it seems is that there is a sword that is a power that's bestowed from whoever has the Rose Bride, quote unquote, under their command. And that leaves a lot of things to be implied, which we'll get to as we go. But we'll just go through this. So, I love the architecture. I love I know it's in the 90s, but it feels, the puffy sleeves feel so 80s. I know this was written in 1996, 1998, but those puffy sleeves are straight out of 1984. I'm sorry. So I love the big giant puff sleeves of the uniforms. They're great. The funny thing is the guys, I know Utena says that she's imitating all of the guys' uniforms. One, their uniforms are all green. Hers is black because girl be fashionable. And two, they're all wearing pants. And she's like, no, I'm wearing biker shorts. Because screw you. I feel like I just watched the other day the video Shoes by Kelly, and it's like, shoes, oh my god, shoes. And the part at the very beginning of that video where she goes, I'm gonna get what I want. I feel like that's Utena to a T, right? So then we have Wakaba. We'll put Wakaba down here. Wakaba very much reminds me of the Sailor Moon Molly equivalent. Oh, Serena. She reminds me of Molly from Sailor Moon. Or I know she has a different name in Japan, in Japanese, but in the English dub, she's called Molly, and she's like, oh, Serena. And it's funny, in Sailor Moon, she is in love with, Molly's character is in love with Nephlite, who is one of Queen Beryl, who's the antagonist, one of her minions. And her minions in Sailor Moon all kind of look like the student council in this series. So at first I was like, is the student council good or bad? Because in Sailor Moon, the council, they're all bad guys and they all kind of look like them. So I don't know if this is trying to subvert Sailor Moon's like formula there a wee bit. There doesn't seem to be a ringleader among them. It just seems like they're all a council or a group. They also have different colored hair, which reminds me of Croca's basketball a bit, but also reminds me of the gemstone antagonist from Sailor Moon, but also the idea of like Voltron or something where they all combine together to create something. I don't know. But also there's a character in Free Iwatobi Swim Club who is a side character and a friend of Go, the main girl character in that series, who has red hair instead of pink hair, and she has the exact same haircut as this girl. So that feels like a direct reference. Feels like a reference to me. But Wakaba was waiting on Saionji, who's a total prick. And then the other girls are like, oh, no, your boyfriend. These other two girls, the girl with the Karen haircut and the other girl who looks like Lo Binghae from Scum Villain, these girls, like, why are you friends with them? They're sort of assholes. But then again, it's middle school. And middle schoolers are assholes. Like, I was one too. I understand. So it's just like, what a bunch of savages. How dare. So I love the design of this school, this building, everything, the rose architecture. It's all so outlandish and bougie, but I freaking love it. I'm very curious to know if the student council created this school building. Like, is it going to be like a Twilight scenario where we find out they're actually, even though they're middle schoolers, they're like 600 years old? I'm so curious. Also, what's fun about it is the architecture and everything has this kind of European design. It's extravagant. And it's outrageous and it feels weird and off, but it's done so intentionally and I love it. The atrium is maybe my favorite set piece. I'm gonna take a picture of this. This atrium, I freaking love it. It's such a cool little set design. And the thing about it is that Himemiya, we'll get her. Himemiya is the one that's the Rose Bride, and she's in the atrium that's also like the little garden. And the thing about it is that it looks like a bird cage. It even has a little hook at the top, like you hang it up. It looks like a bird cage, like she's being imprisoned by this power that she has. And she'll tell us it's like something of Dios later, but it feels like a prison, right? Then we have the forest, the Forbidden Forest that looks instead like another dimension, like maybe their headquarters. So then we have the forest over here, which might be their headquarters, possibly, where all this is going down, and they just hide it with the forest so that people don't go there because you're not supposed to. And then, yeah, the tower, the cityscape, all this. It feels very weird. But yeah, Otori Academy. Sure thing, Jan. Interesting. So yeah, all these school grounds, I don't know, it's all on this hilltop, and there's this like other plane of existence with like a castle, like a trick of the light, as Sionji calls it, and all that. I'm like, is it a spaceship? Is it like, is this entire mountainside and everything like a spaceship or something where they're aliens and they've come and like inhabited this place and they just keep getting reincarnated? I have so many questions, and I'm ready for this series to eventually tell me answers, right? I saw images of them on horseback with knight suits of armor on. I'm ready to see what this all leads to, right? And Utena, her outfit even looks kind of futuristic and like sci-fi, so interesting. This poor teacher, though, Tenjo Utena-san. So Tenjo Utena. Like, the teacher gets on to her being like, why you dress like a boy? And Utena's like, there's no rules against it. It's not strange attire. She's like, nothing says I can't wear it in the rule book. And so the rule book even has the crest with the seal of roses on it like they have. So I'm so fascinated to know about the world building in this series, which I know we have 40 episodes. It's gonna give it to us at some point, right? Are you gonna make a fool out of me for another term? So clearly maybe she's in like 8th grade. The basketball game, though, like, I freaking love Utena with the red boy shorts, like the sports bra on, taking on the guys. My thing is, I'm like, girl, why don't you join the guys team? You're clearly like the best player. These guys kind of suck. Like, you're clearly the best player out of all of them. So why don't you join the guys team? Right? What's the deal? Because when the one guy asks her and she's just like, he says, why don't you join our basketball team? And he's like, winning regionals would be a piece of cake. And if she had said, I'm not going to join your team just so you'll win, I would have got that. I would have been like, yeah, that makes sense. But then when she's like, well, I happen to be a girl. And I'm like, but you played against him in that practice game. And she's like, as if I'd want to play basketball surrounded by sweaty boys. And they're like, but you just played with us. I was like, so then they say that she's pretty much a guy. And she kind of takes offense to that. And she's like, you're being rude. And then they're like, well, why do you wear that uniform then? And she's like, to be a prince. So her construct is very interesting. Like, she doesn't want to be considered a guy. She's not saying that she's trans. She's saying that she is a woman. But the role that she wants to play is that of a prince. Because in the stories, the prince is the one who gets to save others. The prince is the one that gets to be on top. The prince is the one that gets to be in the position of power. And the princess is the powerless one that's the damsel in distress and has to rely on the prince. And Utena's basically saying, I don't need no man. I can do this all myself. Thank you very much. Which, I get that. I just, I wish she'd been a little bit nicer to the guys. She's like, I want to be a cool prince, not a princess who needs protecting. I'm like, I like Utena's character a lot. I really do. I like that she's kind of this strong female role character that's just like, I'm going to take this BS. So then she smells the roses and sees Himemiya, who's the new transfer student, in the atrium. And she has her hairs all like rolled up. So her hair is rolled up so it feels like it is a lot longer than it seems. Now the ED shows her as the Rose Bride in the dress, but it shows Himemiya with him as well. So I don't know if that means that she was formerly the prince and now she's been reborn into Himemiya, and Utena has to, I don't know if that ED is suggesting that Utena was the princess and the prince came to her, and now Himemiya is the Rose Bride but was once the prince, because they both have green eyes. They both have the same skin tone. She just has darker hair than he does. I don't know what that... I'm assuming we will find out as we go. I also like that she's bordered by pink roses. and which kind of tied to Utena. So Utena's like, oh, okay, the Sin of Roses. Yeah, I recall that. I remember that. Why is it so nostalgic to me? And she has that crest. But then we see, while she's sitting there watching, we see Saionji come up, who's like gets mad at her. And I agree with Utena, where she's like, I don't want PDA. I don't want to see that. And I'm like, I agree. PDA is not like, go do that in private. But then he hits her, and I'm like, oh no. Like, what the hell? And I like Utena's like, excuse me, none of that. Saionji is a prick. Saionji is an asshole. I don't like him at all. So let's put him on here. We have Saionji, who is the guy with the green hair. Green with envy. Makes sense. And he has purple eyes, so he's the polar opposite color palette as Himemiya. Surprising no one. And she's like, yeah, he went too far. He goes too far in a lot of places. I don't like him at all. But then he gets stopped by another man that looks like he's 30, who has the voice of Dio, the voice of Zeke, the voice of Alba, the voice of Toji. I'm just like, yes, bitch, yes. And he's in this beautiful red locks. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So these guys look like knights. They do not look like middle school student council members. He also has this like he seems to be the polar opposite of Saionji, right? Because he grabs his hand and Utena's like, who the hell is he? Like, thank goodness this guy showed up. So then we have exposition Deus Ex Machina Wakaba, who comes in, and Wakaba's like, oh, I don't need a boyfriend, I have you, Utena. And it's like, oh, that's really cute. She's like, oh, Saionji-sama. And she's like, do you know about him? It's like, I recognize the guy in front of him. He's Kiryu Toga, the student council president. And he has purple eyes, just like Saionji, right? So we have Kiryu Toga, which has the red hair. And so Saionji's the VP, and he's the president of the student council. Okay. So we got them. And he doesn't seem to put up with any of Saionji's shenanigans. And Saionji Kyoichi. Sure, I'm going to call him Saionji because that's easier. And the girl is Himemiya Anthe. Anthe is a weird name, right? No one asked her to, but all the weirdo does is take care of the roses. So I don't know if that means that she is... because she's the Rose Bride, I don't know if that's why she's taking care of the roses or if it has something to do with the prince. I don't know. I'm intrigued. But so Wakaba has a crush on Saionji. And she's like, they're only together because they're on student council. They're not actually boyfriend and girlfriend. Anyway, so then we go up to the mysterious room of student council with like all the red curtains. When they go into the forest and it starts to sing the song, it was giving me so many Puella Magi Madoka Magica vibes. I was like, oh good, I'm glad we haven't left. I was like, what is happening? And also the voice of Utena as the little girl in the beginning narrating sounded a little bit like Kyubey. Just saying. So then we go to this mysterious room and we have this conversation. So fellow council members. So there's somebody with yellow hair, like orange hair, that's a ginger, and somebody with blue hair. And so we have somebody with blue hair that is like the secretary, right? They're taking all of the notes. And then we have someone with orange hair with the curls. Now somebody in the OP had blonde hair, but we've not seen them yet. So I don't know. Don't know who they are. And so it's like, Saionji, we who wear the red rose seal are all chosen members. So they've been chosen. And I like that the blue one has blue roses around there. And then the other one has orange. Did you forget that adhering to the code is the one and only mandate? So the council has to follow this code. We don't know what the code is. We don't know why. We don't know how this works. I like they all have red roses. The roses adherent to their color. And your recent treatment of the bride is problematic. So yeah, I like that Kiryu is like, why are you doing this? Why are you treating her like this? And so then Saionji speaks up and says, oh, is that so? And he says, you're currently engaged to her, but that doesn't mean you're free to treat her however you please. So it seems like the one with blue hair is recording all of this or writing it down. So being engaged means that the flower is technically, quote unquote, yours. And he can treat her supposedly however he wants to, which is weird. And then that, when the one with the blue hair said however he pleases, they seem really nervous about that. Like, they are not happy with that whole line, however he pleases. So I don't like the connotation of that. I'm like, we've already seen some like abuse. So I'm like, am I not going to like Saionji's character at all? And then the one with orange hair said however he pleases. Don't be rough with the bride. The student council's existence is the will of the end of the world. So apparently the end of the world sounds like an organization. It doesn't sound like literally the end of the world. It sounds like a group or an organization or an entity. Kind of like the God Hand, I guess, in Berserk. It sounds like an entity or an organization. And then when that song in the forest starts talking about the apocalypse, it's like, well, that would kind of go along with the whole end of the world thing. So the end of the world would not take kindly to learning about this. Yeah, so we have these 4 individuals, and 5 if we count the one with blonde hair, and then 7 if we count Himamiya and Utena, right? Which seems about right. But Saionji is not seemingly having a problem with this. There also seems to be kind of a sexual connotation with the whole bride of the Rose Bride, because he's like, we're just a happy pair of lovebirds. And I'm like, that has a sexual connotation, but I don't like it. I'm not a fan. Personally not a fan. So then, what does it say? So the one has a stopwatch with a rose on it, and it says set, mute, reset, start, and it's like 3 minutes and 12 seconds. I don't know what the purpose of the stopwatch is. I'm curious. Interesting. If you're concerned about the code of the Red Seal, then follow the code and duel with me for the bride. Which is what Utena ends up doing. Now, Kiryu says that our next duel will soon be happening, so I guess there is going to be a duel that's planned? I don't know. I feel like Anthony's files are French because the middle part seems French. Interesting. There's also like a stone with a little pink orb, so I don't know if that's to do with the Rose Bride or whatever. But the Rose Crest. So Wakaba notes that the school is kind of has the same crest. So it's like, are you all like from the same school? What's the deal? Where is the lavender-haired person? And she's like, a prince on a white horse gave it to me. The ring will guide you to me. Someone told me that when I got it. She's like, but I was so young, I can barely remember it. And so Wakaba was like, oh yeah, I used to believe my mom when she said I was from the princess of the Onion Kingdom. I was like, I feel like, is that making fun of the Mushroom Kingdom of Mario? Whatever. Anyway, but then, yeah, man, Utena does a big forehead joke. That was savage. So yeah, Utena gets pissed off because Saionji posts the love letter that Wakaba posted on there. And all these middle school boys, they're all a bunch of assholes. I'm like, which, you know what? They're middle school boys. But the thing that gets me about this scene is that they all, like, get kind of like... In my middle school, the people surrounding this love letter would be a bunch of girls. And they'd be a bunch of savages. But the guys, they wouldn't give 2 cents. They'd be like, ew, gross. And they'd, like, run away being like, girls, ew. And they would have nothing to do with this. So that's interesting that the guys here in this world are the ones that rally around the letter, and they're making fun of whoever wrote it. But I'm like, interesting. It feels like on the cusp of the men that think that, you know, relationships are gross and they don't want to be in a relationship, and then the ones that are kind of like envious that somebody's confessed. So this is like it's a weird scene. But the point is that it gives Utena a motivation to go find Saionji and be like, bitch, please. And then we get to Saionji, who has like his... One thing I like as well is we talk about gender expectations, and all of the guys in middle school at this institution all have the short, stereotypical, like, middle school masculine haircut. But then you cut to Saionji and Kiryu, who have the locks that are like so like just fabulous, and it's like just completely, you know, going against gender expectations. They have the really long, flowing, lustrous hair, which is interesting. Also, the fact that Kiryu's hair is red like a rose, and Saionji's is green, like with the thorns of the stem. Interesting. Also, I do like the kendo outfit and how color coordinated we are, but he's like, well, it could have been anybody. Who's to say it's my letter? And she's like, you know it's your letter. And then he makes fun of Okaba, and Utena's like, that's it. You made fun of my friend. We have problems. So that's when she's like, no, you're the captain of the kendo club. We're going to duel today after school. And he's like, oh, so you must be the next challenger. They're operating on a whole different level. They think challengers, duels, all of this is on a different level. And so they're like, yep, we're going to meet in the dueling arena forest. And she's like, oh, the forest nobody's allowed to enter? It feels like he just took her there to, like, teach her a lesson. And then we have the puppet girls being like, have you heard the news? There'll be a duel behind the forest. Oh, brave hero who fights for her friend's sake. Be careful, oh, brave hero. They follow a code in the forest. Have you heard? Have you heard? No, I haven't heard of the code of the forest, but we're going to, I guess, find out. That moment there with the girls, the shadows that were puppets, reminded me of like a medieval puppet, like Greek choir or Hanako-kun. So yeah, she goes into this forest and uses her ring to unlock the door, which I'm like, he didn't notice the ring until after they started dueling, right? Was that correct? Did he notice the ring like before she started to duel him? I don't think she did. So how do you think she was going to get there if she didn't have the ring that let her in? What are you doing, Saionji? In any case, she gets led up to this amazing staircase. I love that she's like, what's with this entrance? I love that she's like, this seems like overkill. It seems like a lot. It seems like way too much. But she's like, well, I'm going to go in. And then we have this like spiral leading up to where the duel is. Feels like Magica. They talk about the absolute destiny, the apocalypse. Birth records, baptismal registry, records of death. Like, what are we getting here? A midwife amid the desert of darkness, a wet nurse. What is this talking about? Is it talking about rebirth, like her being reborn? What? A gilded Shangri-La. Okay, Shangri-La makes me think of the Yaoi series, so... it's a fictional place in the Tibetan mountains. Also from the novel Lost Horizon from 1933. Okay. A gilded Shangri-La. Okay. And then, yeah, this whole scene, day and night invert. I'm like, is this like another dimension that they're coming from? A time-gilded paradise lost. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, there's a story. Darkness of Sodom, darkness of light. I'm like, this all feels like it's entering another dimension. So I'm so curious to see the world building with what we get. And then like the absolute destiny, apocalyptic darkness. And then there's like calyptic Paco. Like it gets crazy. Yeah, like I have so many questions. I feel like I'm going to need to watch the next episode before I get answers. But she's like, she's like, what is that? And he's like, oh, it's just a trick of the light. I'm like, that does not seem correct. He's like, it's just a mirage. And so then he's like, you have one of these. And so he tells Anthe to prepare them. And she brings the 2 roses, right? And the goal is that you have to knock the rose off of each other to win. Which, that's what Utena ends up doing. She does what she's supposed to do. And so then, yeah, so the prince has the scent of roses. And it's like, well, what is going on? What's with the prince? What are we going to get with him? Interesting. And she's like, the one whose rose is stricken from their chest loses. And so she wishes her good luck. I like that she has like the mole in the middle of her forehead, kind of like a third eye. But then like, she wishes her good luck and Saionji's just an asshole and hits her for no reason. And then he says, how dare to her? And he says, you're the rose bride. You're the flower just for me. What is the meaning of wishing another good luck? So, I guess in this case, by engaged, if there's a chance, if the Rose Bride is with you, Saionji interprets it as he owns her. What an abusive asshole, right? How dare he? And yeah, and Utena calls him out on it. And then, so the duelist champion, whoever wins the duels and is a champion, gets to have the Rose Bride. Which, poor her, like, how dare, like, leave her alone. So then Utena's like, fine. She's like, all I have to do is beat him, right? So as they're about to do their duel, she says, "O Rose of the noble castle." And she brings out this orb of light that is from her, like imbued within her. And Utena's like, what the heck is this? And she says, "Power of Dios sleeping within me." So the Rose Bride has this power of Dios within her. Makes there be a sword. Okay. Heed your master. It's time to manifest. So it basically makes a sword come out of her. I hate the idea that he's holding her like that because it's such a romantic pose and he's such an asshole. But it's just like, what can we do? What else can we say? We'll get back to that. And yeah, he basically, it is a beautiful shot of him holding her, but it's just like, he's such an asshole. I don't want it to be that way. It's such, the shoujo romance is like, it's all there, y'all. It is all there. That shot of him holding her is just, And then she has the sword that comes out from her. The power to revolutionize the world. And I like her reflection is in the sword. That part's really good, that her reflection is there. So her name is Revolutionary Girl Utena. That's the name of the series. So I'm assuming she gets the power of the sword. So what do we do with that? It's kind of insane. I also think that it's an interesting, I think it's an interesting commentary that she has to listen to whatever he says and she has to do whatever he says. But the power for him to be in charge is within her. So he's kind of actually at her mercy, but he tries to like overcompensate and make her be his when it's actually the other way around. Interesting. So then they start saying when, where, who, which. And I'm like, what? As the two of them fight. And she fights with a little kendo stick. And there's all this stuff happening. Like there was all these lyrics going on while they were battling. Right? So as they're fighting, I love the stance. And he's like, well, you're pretty good for a girl. And she's like, bitch, really? So he basically comes at her saying, like, are you trying to be a prince who saves a damsel in distress? Meanwhile, these lyrics are on the screen talking about a bloodstream held by the cage of memory. Okay. And so, cradled in 1,000 years of bliss. So are they talking about the bloodstream cradled in memory in 1,000 years of bliss? I'm guessing, are they referring to reincarnation, that she's been in another body and now she's reincarnated in this moment and they're reliving their old relationships? He just doesn't remember her. And he says, I am an actor, eternal metaphors. All right, Anna would be all down for this. And she says that's a real sword. She figures out that he could actually hurt her in this moment. You challenge the sword of Dios with a useless weapon. So the sword of Dios is literally that sword that's within the Rose Bride. Okay. All right. So what else do we get here? A desert's wintry sphinx. Pinks. Okay. Maybe that's going to give us some explanation. And he's like, you don't know about the sword of Dios? And I'm like, you just questioned how she got the ring 5 seconds ago. And he's like, who are you? And he's like, well, you're piquing my interest since you're just here on a whim. And she's like, well, we're not finished. And then it says, of the flesh that is born and dies. So I feel like we're just talking about reincarnation. But I guess we'll know eventually. The sad wind tells you. I want to see what these lyrics are saying because I was too focused on the dialogue in the first time. The holy actor, eternal metaphors. And he calls her a prince on a white horse here to save the princess. Yeah, I'm so curious. And that's when it says, a Marginaux of light and dark fallen down to hell. What? I'm so curious. I feel like all of this is going to make sense as we go. It's just so much thrown at you in the first episode that you're just left wondering what's going to happen. And it says, brightly burn. Awaken and sing. Born into the world, born in an instant. Okay. Then endless cycle. Yeah. So basically the two of them, so all of these student council members, they could all be beings born over and over again. Are they going to be portrayed like as, Greek gods or whatever? I'm so curious. I'm very intrigued. I'm into this. This is like, it's very mysterious, but it's a lot of fun. And there's just like a bonkers factor to it, which I love. And his rose got destroyed. Yes. Oh, I love it. I love it. So, yeah. So, and of course, and then he's like, Auntie, and she says, oh, have a wonderful day, Saionji Senpai. She doesn't have to call him Sama anymore. She doesn't have to call him by his title, which means he's not in control of her anymore. Okay. So then Utena didn't really want control of her at all. And then the thing about it is, there's Kiryu being... I can see why they got this voice actor to play him. They had, like, Kiryu on a ledge with, like, he has the RuPaul, like, monocles being like, I can't wait to see how this turns out. Like, has the glasses. And he's like, to think she's the Academy's middle school student. But then he says this creepy line where he's like, oh, yes, baby. And I'm like, no... Nobody with a creepy potential voice should ever say the word baby. Also, what? He's like, you've lit a fire in my heart. I'm like, girl, is this about to be like a reverse harem? Is that what's about to happen with Utena? Having this harem around her, except for Saionji? When she says, man, this has been one really weird day. I'm like, girl, the half of it. So he's like, what was all that about? And then... Himamiya comes out and tells her, from this day forward, I am your flower. Basically, I'm your power. So there we go. Okay. So then we see the prince with her, and she's the princess there. So I'm like, was Utena at one point the rose with the power of Dios? Was at one point Utena the power of Dios? And she was the Rose Bride, and then the prince saved her and became the Rose Bride in her place when they were reborn? Is that something that ended up happening? Because she's like in the same position as Himamiya. And then we see Himamiya in the same place looking up to him as the prince. So I'm so curious. Like if Utena was in the same place at one point and then they all like kind of swap places. I don't know how this works. Because now she's the prince to Himamiya. I'm so curious. Yeah, I'm very curious to see like what we get with these two. Because they're both like in the same type of dress. One's pink and one's red. But they're with the same prince. Huh. I mean, if Utena was once the Rose Bride herself, what do we do with that? Like, if they're reincarnated and it's just a cycle where originally Utena was the Rose Bride, but then the prince saved her and became the Rose Bride in the next life, and she becomes the prince, and it's just going to cycle and cycle over and over again, and Himamiya and Utena are just destined to always be each other's savior and each other's power over and over again throughout time and space. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. Yes, please. But I'm so curious to see what we're getting. I'm not going to wait until the next episode. I'm definitely going to watch episode 2 and see what more exposition we get. But I'm really excited to hear your thoughts down below. The series is crazy in the best way, shape, or form, and I can't wait to get more answers. So, yeah. I hope that you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And, yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Revolutionary Girl Utena.